Tanager is here for children, teens, young adults, and families as they navigate the many stressors of the world today. Tanager inspires, empowers, and heals by providing tools and support needed to navigate the hardships of life and overcome obstacles. Our expertise and specialty trainings offer a wide range of approaches, and we'll join alongside you to create solutions to enhance your wellness. We are here for you and your family. Tanager, inspire, empower, heal.
Tanager and the Meraki Institute of Learning proudly present Together We Rise,
a series based on the Rise, Wellness, and Resilience framework.
In times of uncertainty and adversity, it is easy to feel overwhelmed and disheartened.
Amidst the challenges our community may face,
let us never lose sight of the strength and resilience that also resides in our neighborhoods.
This series highlights the vital role each of us have in nurturing that resilience.
That community impact.
The power and influence each of us have to show up in spaces
with empathy,
openness,
and kindness.
Because it is in this collective that connections grow stronger,
our compassion shines brighter,
and our spirit rises even higher.
It is together
that we rise.
Welcome back for another episode of Together We Rise. Here with your co-hosts Tanya and
Opara.
And I'm super excited to introduce our guest here today, John. John, will you introduce yourself to the audience?
Well, yeah. First of all, thank you for inviting me to do this. My name is John Tursi. I've been the executive director for the Boys and Girls Club for the last 25 years.
Yeah, and they're lucky for it.
Some might not say that, but yes, I think.
John, you know, this whole series is talking about wellness, resilience, and you are such an advocate, you know, leading the Boys and Girls Club, being a place of belonging and opportunity and exposure to experiences for kids. Tell us a little bit about your own why and how you see the importance of wellness and resilience for our community.
Well, truthfully, and we've been all doing this for a long time, I could go back 35 years because I was a teacher and a coach before that. Yeah. And, I think every decade, everybody always says that this has been the toughest time for kids. I just believe this truly is the toughest time for kids that we've seen. And I will tell you, I was in Dubuque when the KKK was there trying to set up rallies and everything else, and we were fighting in the school every day and everything else, and that was a whole different set of trouble. But you look at now, and I mean, kids really just with COVID and then all the social media stuff. I think it's just important that we all work together to try and give these kids an opportunity to be a kid, to just be a kid and play and have fun. So I think that's the most important thing we can all do right now for our kids, is let them be something so that they don't have to worry about all that other stuff.
Yeah, it makes me think so much of like, what are we doing today to create lasting generations that make and bring to this world an energy of community, of wellness, of mattering, of belonging. You know, Opara, you talk a lot about fostering the next generation.
Yeah, it's one of the things I think that's been so important in our work. And we get to meet every week. I get the pleasure of meeting with John and Youthport, another initiative that we work on. But I think back to when we first met and years ago, and I was learning about what you did at the club. First of all, I think it should be said, you serve almost 300 kids a day in this community, which I don't know any other youth server nonprofit that's working with that number of kids. But one of the things that you were so proud of and continue to be proud of is the number of kids you actually feed in those programs. And I remember us talking about the level of hunger for youth in the community and how, when you think about the club, it's not just there for fun and games and activities, but really you're meeting a core need that a child has. And I don't know if you want to just talk about that program, because that's been so remarkable, and especially you've expanded in the last few years too.
Well, I think all of us anymore, right? I mean, there's care that you can give for kids, and there's a safe place, which is very important, and everything else. But I do think with all the organizations that we're talking about now, what Tanager's done and what the club and YPN, our partners at Youthport and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think basic needs, right? Basic needs have to be met for anybody to be successful. I mean, I know when I'm hungry that I'm not a good person to be around. No. So I remember years ago when I first started and it was summer and kids were coming and they had no food. And parents would give them like $1 to go use in our vending machine for the whole day. And I'm like, we can't do this. I mean, hungry kids are not happy kids, no matter what we're doing. And so it really just became, we've got to do this. I mean, I don't know, we got to find a way to do this. And so, yeah, it went from, serving just stuff out of the hay cap and all that kind of stuff that we could get to finding a place and then going with the school district and being able to do a hot meal. And you know that because you have kids on campus. And so feeding them was essential to us just having our staff not lose their mind because kids are going crazy, right? So we had to feed them. It just wasn't that. So yeah, I think last year we did 53,000 free hot meals for our kids. Yeah, and so it's an important thing. It's not just, hey, I'm glad we're doing it. It was, we have to do this because we really didn't know if our kids were getting any food when they were out.
It makes me think when sometimes we live a life of privilege, when we live a life where we have experiences where we didn't have to go hungry, it's not always on the forefront of our mind to think that people are living in a hungry state more than they're not. And that if we think about the brain-body connection, we say all the time, if we want to help regulate our emotions, our moods, we have to drink water, we have to move our bodies, and we have to have healthy nutrition. Like, it matters when we think about how we create wellness for kids, but for the larger community.
So when I first started, I heard this comment a lot, and I don't know I hear it as much as I used to, but people would say, because Cedar Rapids is so giving, right? And they do such a good job of providing clothes and everything else, that our poor don't look poor, right?
Interesting. Yeah.
And so when you hear that, and they don't realize really the need that's going on in Cedar Rapids, and you're right, listen, if a kid's at home and his parents are hungry too, that's not a good thing, because then they're agitated and they're not being the best people they could be. So I think really we have, being down in this area now, right? You're down in the med corridor with us now. You can see how many homeless and hungry people there are every single day. I mean, the loaves out here, MCO in our building, it's amazing how many people we're seeing. So if you gotta have, family's gonna be together, right? You got to take care of their basic needs.
Yeah. The thing that you talk about, that Opara, it reminds me of you a lot in your leadership. It for you became, this is our responsibility. Like, we have a certain responsibility, one as nonprofits and as youth serving agencies, but also just as humankind.
Yeah. It's been interesting watching the evolution of the club too, and I have to say, the club is also, and I know, been touched on some pretty tough times too, and we talk about resilience and helping kids continue to go through tough challenges. I know you recently lost a staff person to some violence, and there's been some violence at the clubs, not by club kids, but just in that community, and how you continue to create a safe space for those young people to come. And I know how hard that was for you as a leader, because that's all of our fears, right? Do you just want to talk a little bit about how you navigated that, and those are really tough waters for anybody?
Well, in all sincerity, having partners like you guys. I mean, in all sincerity, when we talk about it, the first thing that comes to mind is what? Mental health, and how is everybody affected by it. So you lose a staff member who's integral to your kids. And not only that, and I know you do the same thing, we try to create a sense of family with our team, right? I mean, I always tell them, I love you all like your family. So when things are bad for you, they're bad. So we need to be able to try and fix it and help it. And so it really, we had to rely on partners like you that we're not mental health experts. So that's why I called. Hey, what can you do? How can you help? Having 5,000 clubs in the United States of America who've gone through these things. It was nice to reach out to BGCA and them say, well, how can we help? I mean, Jim Clark, the president and CEO of BGCA, called and said, Johnny, how can I help you, man? What do you need right now? So you got to be able to rely on people at that time, because you can't do it all yourself. We all know that, right? And then let the people who really know more than you do what they can do to help you out. So that's what we did. In all sincerity, clubs still, the kids at that club in particular, are still reeling a little bit, and the staff are too, as you know, because Lori works for both of us. But but really I think it's you try to get them as many resources as possible to help them get through tough times.
Yeah, it makes me just think of that essence of collaboration, the essence of connection, the power of relationships. You know, and I think that's a huge message of resilience. It's not that we have to do things alone, that it's that we have to be perfect or we have to be strong. That's not resilience. You know, when we research so much of like the heart of resilience is not necessarily even just about grit or temperament. It's about a mindset. It's about saying, like, I'm capable of hard things. We're capable of getting through this. You matter, right? You have purpose. You have belonging here and coming together. And that, I think the club represents that so much, that essence of belonging, right? The essence of safety. How do you foster that every day with that many kiddos?
It's probably a better question for the unit directors.
That's fair.
I will say
But
this.
it comes from your heart too, John.
Well, you know, it's interesting. When we took on the challenge of the LGBTQ thing, right? We were the first club in Iowa. We were the first really group in the area that took it on. And I remember sitting in one of our staff meetings, because some of our staff were a little bit more timid about this, right? And I remember pointing up to our mission statement. I said, doesn't that say we serve all kids? I mean, when you get down to it, all kids are all kids. So no matter where they're coming from, you know, you got to be able to meet them there. And then when it became too big of a project, Opara and you guys stepped in. I mean, it was, we were getting so many kids 1 or 2 nights a week that it was like, we need more. We couldn't do it. So then the collaborative effort was, hey, I remember talking about one time, and Opara's just like, well, let's see what we can do. Yeah. Hold on. We got space. Maybe we can do this. And so I still consider it a partnership today.
Absolutely.
Even though you guys are really doing the heavy lifting and everything else. But you're right, you can't do it by yourself. Yeah. You got to have good partners in this world. And I will say, in the 25 years, more walls are breaking down. Yeah. You're seeing a lot more efforts where people are coming together saying, okay, how can we do this together? Because we need each other.
Yeah.
This has been a project that we've been talking about for, I think, since I got here, coming out from the flood, right? I wasn't here for the flood, and how that changed the Boys and Girls Club and how you really dispersed. And you've been waiting years and years and years to build a new club. And so you're in the process of this wonderful capital campaign and build out. And I think that's going to be such an amazing hub. Yeah. And I think one of the things you said, again, we go back to collaboration, that you said from the very beginning, you're designing it, is I want to make this a place where people want to come in, other community partners want to come in, that this is everybody's club. And it's just such a beautiful vision. So you just want to talk a little bit about that. That's going to be exciting.
You know, I'm the most impatient person in the world. And you've been going through it far more than I have.
Building is so much fun.
It's like a great thing, right? So Boys and Girls Club started out of being a community center, actually. Yeah. And then our founder, Mike O'Dean, started to realize that we needed more than just that. And so then he went and found Boys and Girls Clubs. And so back in the early days, even when I was still there, we had more, I would say, community activities still that were kind of going on, although we were really transitioning to Boys and Girls Club. And Lori came to me and said, John, I don't want to do just Boys and Girls Club anymore. I mean, if we're going to do this, can we do this? And I'm like, so what are you thinking? Because I had already been thinking about stuff. And she's like, well, like, you know, I don't want to be, but I want those old ladies coming back and walking in our gym. I want to let people come in and play cards again in the club. And how can we partner with the school district? Because Johnson Elementary's right over there. And on bad winter days, could they come in our gym and our game room? And then how can YPN use the facility on their Thursday nights for family? And how can we, because we've talked about this a lot, like, you know, what you're already doing at some of our sites because of the 21st century. How do we get art therapy and the fun things that you do into the club? So it really was early on. It wasn't just going to ever be a Boys and Girls Club. It was always going to be that we want the community to be a part of it. And if you don't do things other than just Boys and Girls Club stuff, well, then why would the community come use your place?
Right. Yeah.
I keep resonating on the word you said, all kids, but it's like all humans, all kids, all people, right? Like what that truly means for us in creating an inclusive community centered on wellness, that everyone has something to contribute. everyone has something that helps them give back, but also that they could receive. The interconnection between all of those pieces.
You know, the one thing that it's been mulling in my head a lot lately is, how do we know who the next person to cure cancer is going to be? Yeah. You know what I mean? Yes. I mean, if we start putting up these walls for people just because they're different than us, right? You know, I'm an old guy from Cedar Rapids, Iowa.
25 years young.
Yeah, thank you. But you know what I mean? I don't know who the next person is that's going to be the person that's going to change the world. So why would we not give them the chance to be the person they want to be? You know, just because I don't agree with somebody doesn't mean I shouldn't let them choose to be that way. So if we're going to be inclusive and we're going to find that person who's going to change the world, we better not take it away from them before they get the chance to do it for us. That's all I keep thinking. You know what I mean? I mean, how can we just give them a chance to be the person they want so they grow up and they do that discovery or whatever it is that's going to change the world?
It really makes me think about, because I mean, you guys have done in a lot of your fundraisers shown kind of the legacy that and the influence that the club has on people. It's not a place that is seen as, okay, just come and you get to just hang out, but we're going to pour into you and help you pour into your own potential, because the sky's the limit.
Yeah.
And I believe you guys believe that about people, about kids.
And people always say, well, how are you different than daycare? And I think there's a lot of ways. I mean, really, but ultimately, I think the thing is we try to provide 6 core areas for our kids, because we know not all kids come to us for the gym or the game room. Right. Now, don't get me wrong. Most of the kids come to us for those reasons, right? It's what's the fun that we can have at the club. But ultimately, if you have a wide variety of programs and activities, you get to see kids flourish in things that you may not have thought. Yeah. I tell you what, the funniest thing that I remember when I was very early starting, you know, we go in the art room and they'd have beads, you know, little beads. You always thought, oh, that's a little girl's thing, right? The girls do the bead thing, right? You know, I mean, remember 25 years ago, a little bit different thought process. Yeah. And sure enough, the little boys are just loving them. They're putting together the best beadwork and everything else. And I just remember thinking, now, if you don't give the kid a chance to do that, how do you know what they'd like to do? Yeah. Really, so I think that's part of it is we just try to provide as many programs and things as possible. And then we are like you. We're very fortunate. I mean, people talk all the time about this, but we have people been with us for 24 years, 15 years, 10 years. Yeah, it's not, when I look at our unit directors, and 4 of them at one point had come through as kids, went through our junior staff program, then became a part-timer, second, and now they're leading a unit. It just, they have all those experiences. So it really did bring those people up, and they got to flourish in what they want to do.
So you're a couple decades in to doing this role, right? What have you seen changes in young people? What have you seen? I know you talked about silos really starting to come down amongst the professionals and trying to find collaborative, but what have you seen just working with kids? Because you also coached a lot during this whole time, right? You coach football as well, and so you've worked with kids in all kind of different ways. So just kind of seeing what have you seen over your couple decades of experience?
Here's something that we got to get better at. And I know we want to be positive, so I don't mean to put a spin. But you know, kids have a general disrespect for anybody of authority. And I just think we've lost that a little bit in that, you know, not everything has to be so confrontational, right? I mean, look at the way our politicians treat each other. I mean, is it any wonder why we have this kind of general disrespect for authority and people that they don't treat each other like human beings? I mean, I don't remember on stages where, you know, people are calling each other names. You know what I'm saying? So I just feel like, to me, that's one of the things that's kind of been dropped. I'd like to see kids just understand that you know, there's a reason people are in charge. They usually have your best interest. And so I'd like to see that, because I think that's one of the biggest problems we're seeing right now. It's really hard to get kids to just understand that there are rules that exist for them, actually. You know what, they're so against it most of the time that it's like, no, this is to help you and to get through things. So That's the biggest thing I've seen with kids and families, frankly.
Do you think that disrespect is much more about just as human beings, not even just kids, but as human beings, we are not as respectful and open and kind and compassionate to each other in a more divisive political culture in particular? And it's not just about like, oh, kids, respect your authorities, but just as human beings, we're not as open and inclusive?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it is. I mean, listen, they're not learning. That's not something they come out thinking, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's that old adage, right? Kids aren't born racist. They're not. That's a learned trait that's happening. And that's what I mean. I think if you look at our leaders in politics are being disrespectful to each other. So why would kids think that that's important if they don't? So absolutely, don't get me wrong. I think it's a culture that's going on right now that I don't remember it. I remember back in the day, if you told a kid, this is what we're going to do. And listen, coaching for 35 years, I've had a lot of players say to me, especially when I started off coaching in college, they'd say to me, hey, coach, could we try this? Well, yeah. And I'm all about that. And I'm, hey, that's how you get kids to buy in or people to buy into it. But then it's how you respond back to that.
I think what you're talking about, that it makes me think about, Umpire, we talk about this a lot because it's in leadership, it's everywhere. It's just that like essence of that emotional intelligence, how we as a society communicate, how we cooperate. I mean, this is, if we're talking about wellness and how to create a community centered on wellness, I think some of the things you're seeing with the younger generation are things that as a society we're struggling with.
But also, what do we pay attention to?
Yeah.
Right? We are all stressed, busy, everybody's running around in this role now. What brings you joy in it? I know this building's gonna make you happy when it's done.
Yes, it will.
But what really brings you joy in the work?
Building great collaborations with people that can do a lot. We do a lot more because of all of you. And I mean that. Before it was, we just did what we did every day, and then all of a sudden we started being able to do things that we could never do because of folks like you. So I really do. I love the collaborative efforts. I do also find joy in what you're talking about. I think the thing is, we're going to swing back, right? Everything has loops. They do. It's going to come back, and people are going to start getting along a lot better and everything else. And I know that, right? It's so cyclical in everything that goes on. We're all going to bounce back. I get excited about that. I love seeing our workers when a win happens, right?
Yeah.
When you get a good win, it's always good to see them come back and just be excited and happy. And so those are things that are so much fun.
And I think the things that bring you joy and kind of what you're alluding to are the things that like the club centers on. All these things that we learn throughout our life through the experiences we have, you're just dumping those experiences into kids every day. So that, when we think about if a core value of society is to be kind, to be respectful, to be compassionate and caring, it starts with modeling that for kids today. It starts with me and you, And I think that's what the club offers. As you said, there's so many programs, but at the core of it, it comes down to relationships too.
I say that all the time. As many kids as we've had, and Youth of the Year is a great program and everything else, but every time a kid does Youth of the Year, the first thing they start talking about is the person that changed them, not the program. It's always, Miss Lori or Miss Taryn or whoever it was in their life, and it was somebody that was at the club that made the real flip for them, and that's what made the change. So relationships are the key to everything.
So how do you take care of you? I know.
Omar's asked every guest this.
I'm trying to
He's
get as
really
many tips
trying to get
as
tips right
possible
now.
because I've got to work something out. But I know John would work out at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yep.
Well, John.
For years, I used to tell him he was lying. But are we still doing that? How are you taking care of yourself?
I still get up every morning. I actually walk usually in the morning now. And then my wife and I have been working out together. She is far better than me. She's gonna
We
run.
usually are.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, absolutely. I won't argue that. I mean, she's doing half marathons. I have no desire, won't do anything like that. But part of it was she wanted to get stronger because she knew the beating it was going to take. So we started working out together. So I love that. I still get a coach. The club's been great to me. I've been a football coach for 35 years. To me, You know, our jobs, sometimes it's so long term. You don't get to see it. Whereas in football, every Friday night, you got a challenge, right? And sometimes you don't rise up to that, but then how do you get better from that? So coaching's been huge to me, you know that. We are very fortunate. My grandparents, my mom and dad did it. My wife wanted it. I could tell when we were starting to get serious about being together. Just being with family. I just love being with family. Every chance we can get to get together and have fun is to me the biggest
That's great.
stress relievers. Yeah.
I love that. You know, one of the lasting things that I want to say and highlight, because I feel like I'd be amiss if I didn't, is that your daughter is a therapist. I'm trying to create kids that will be servant leaders and give back to this world versus seeing like, oh, mom did that and I'm like gonna be an accountant. Tell me, you know, like that what you poured into her to obviously continue that generational legacy that you're leaving, John.
So, okay, I'll be honest with you. I was nervous because my kids went to Catholic schools. Not a lot of diversity. Catholic schools are great, don't get me wrong, I'm glad we sent them there. But I was always nervous about them and understanding diversity. And one summer she said, I think I'd like to work at the club. And so she went to the South Unit, where Miss Lori is. And I'm just gonna say, I think Lori had a huge impact. And my wife's a teacher, so it's not as if, you know, she knew taking care of people and everything else, but I think when she went to the club and she got to see the other side, it made her really more compassionate. And I really think that's part of what we have to do is we have to get them those experiences, especially kids that don't get to see that, right? Those experiences so they understand there are situations that are not as good as what I have. And so how do I want to help my community back? And I think she saw that. So, you know, she loves it here. She loves what she's doing.
Yes.
She does. She loves it.
I mean, and just like her soul, you know, and so if there is, you know, a legacy that you left, you did a good job. You know, I joke that this was going to be a parenting advice for me as I'm in the thick of it right now because her soul and just honestly, like her ability to see the larger system and the family as a whole. When we think about what we want for people living in our community, she embodies so much of that. So, John, I want to thank you so much for being here with us today, for sharing your wisdom and all that you've done for this community, for the youth of it. It's been a privilege having you.
Thank you very much. It's been awesome being here with you too.
Stay tuned. Next time on Together We Rise.
Making sure that people know that I want to hear it. You know, there's no dumb question. You know, recognizing that everybody isn't the same and we might receive information differently. I think that's important, to be authentic.
That's powerful, right? To see some of my history in this space, for that person to walk in and see, wow, I am part of this.
No matter the challenges you and your family face, Tanager is here for you. We'll meet you wherever you are in your journey and together define a path to reach your goals. Together we rise.
Thank you for joining us today and for spending time with us. We hope today's segment offered hope and inspiration. Today's series brought to you by Tanager and the Meraki Institute of Learning. For more information, please visit our website at www.tanagerplace.org.